Meet Lucas Reed and Mara Whitfield, two ordinary roommates with an ordinary life, until one night, a new series on Netflix changes everything. What starts as casual binge-watching spirals into a nightmare when the show begins to mirror their apartment, their belongings, even their reflections. Every episode pulls them deeper into a terrifying reality where the line between the screen and their lives disappears, and something or someone is learning them, waiting to step out. By the time they realize the horror is real, it's already inside. I thought tonight would be simple, just me, my couch, and a new Netflix series. It had been a long week, and the comfort of a familiar screen seemed harmless enough. I wrapped myself in a blanket, laptop balanced on my knees, and pressed play. At first it was ordinary. Dark hallways, flickering lights, a sense of unease I told myself was just clever cinematography. But soon, a strange feeling crept in, a prickle at the back of my neck. The protagonist on the screen moved through a house that looked wrongly familiar. My chest tightened as I squinted, trying to convince myself it was coincidence. Maybe the furniture was generic, the walls just painted similar colors. Maybe I was imagining patterns where there were none, but then the details grew impossible to ignore. The rug by the hallway, faded and worn, it was mine. The painting of the autumn forest hanging crooked on the wall, it was mine too. Every movement, every step the man took mirrored spaces in my apartment I'd walked through just that morning. My stomach churned, my pulse thundering in my ears. I wanted to look away, to close the laptop and tell myself it was nothing, but some invisible force kept me glued to the screen. The man stopped, turned his head slowly toward a door. The hallway, the doorknob, it was identical to mine. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe the show's set designers had stumbled across images of a typical apartment. But the more I stared, the less plausible it became. The man in the show seemed aware of me, not just the camera, not just the lens, but me. He paused, tilted his head slightly, and I felt it. Like the screen was a window, and he had just noticed I was watching. I shifted in my seat, my hands clammy, my blanket tangled around me like a shield I knew wouldn't protect me. Time slowed. The episode dragged on, each second stretching unnaturally. The man reached toward the door. My heartbeat matched his slow, deliberate movements. My apartment felt colder, the shadows in the corners deeper. I could almost hear faint creaks, almost hear footsteps echoing somewhere in the silence. The tension was unbearable, a taut wire pulled tight inside me, threatening to snap. I told myself to turn away, to close the laptop, to escape, but curiosity rooted me in place. Then the screen cut to black. The abrupt silence in my apartment was deafening. I exhaled shakily, trying to convince myself it was just a show, just imagination. I laughed nervously, but it was hollow. And I knew it. Something in my apartment had shifted, some unseen weight pressing against the edges of my awareness. And then a soft, deliberate creak echoed from the hallway, like someone or something was stepping just out of view. I froze, listening. My pulse pounded louder than ever. The hallway remained empty. The shadows stayed where they had been, yet I could feel them curling closer, reaching toward me. My blanket no longer felt comforting. My apartment, my safe space, felt foreign and threatening. I wanted to convince myself it was my imagination, that it was just nerves. But the unease wouldn't leave. Something had arrived with the show. Something was waiting, just out of sight, patient and watching, and I had no idea how long it had been there, or how long it planned to stay. I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the images from the first episode over and over. The man in my apartment, the door, the hallway. Even during the daylight hours, the memory of him turning his head toward that door sent shivers down my spine. I told myself it was just a coincidence, just clever editing, but the seed of fear had taken root, growing faster than I could contain. Every shadow in my apartment seemed heavier, darker, as if it knew I was terrified. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the distant rumble of traffic sounded amplified, sharper, closer. I tried to distract myself, scrolling through my phone, watching meaningless videos, but nothing worked. And then, like some cruel joke, a notification appeared. Episode 2 is ready. I froze, my thumb hovering over the screen. My rational mind screamed at me not to touch it. I knew I should ignore it, delete it, throw the phone across the room. But a sick curiosity pulled me in, a need to know if what I had seen before was real or just my imagination. I pressed play. The episode began quietly, almost innocuously, but it didn't take long for the unease to return. The man moved through the same hallways, but now the furniture seemed arranged exactly like my living room. My mug sat on the side table on screen, the one I'd used that morning for coffee. The rug was the same, threadbare in the middle, fading near the edges. My stomach lurched. Each step he took was deliberate, precise, almost rehearsed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was being dictated by something else. By me, by my apartment, by something that was learning me. Then he approached a mirror. I didn't notice it at first, just a reflective surface in the corner of the screen. But when I did, my chest tightened. The reflection wasn't his. It was mine. My face, frozen in terror, staring back at me. But something was wrong. The eyes were too wide, too dark, and the lips curved into a slow, cruel smile I didn't recognize. My breathing became shallow, my limbs tense as I stared at the screen, unable to look away. My reflection raised a hand, pressing it against the glass, and I could almost feel it. A cold, heavy pressure, like it was trying to push through, to touch me. The lights in my apartment flickered. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd imagined the reflection moving. But when the power returned, the blank screen of my laptop glared back at me, and I realized I wasn't alone. A shadow in the corner shifted. I could sense it before I saw it, a weight in the air that made my skin crawl. My heart hammered against my ribcage as I slowly turned my head, careful not to make sudden movements. The shadow didn't retreat. It lingered. It waited. And then I heard it. A faint, deliberate exhale. A sound not coming from the screen, not from my speakers, but from the room itself. My eyes darted across the apartment, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw movement in the mirror. My own reflection, smiling at me again, slowly leaning closer, a face I recognized but didn't recognize. I stumbled backward, my heart racing. I wanted to run, to scream, but my body refused. The laptop remained dark, silent, yet I could feel it watching me, following me, learning me. And in that instant, I realized that whatever had started on the screen was no longer confined to fiction. It was here, in my apartment, waiting, patient. The next day, I felt hollow. Every sound, every movement, every shadow reminded me of the show, of him, of the reflection. I avoided mirrors, avoided windows, avoided looking at anything that could betray my own image. Sleep had abandoned me entirely. My apartment felt smaller, more oppressive, as if the walls themselves were closing in. I couldn't stop thinking about the man in the show, and worse, the way the reflection had moved independently, pressing itself against the glass as though it wanted to step out. I told myself I was losing my mind, that I needed rest, but the fear gnawed at my sanity like a living thing. And then it started again. My phone buzzed with a notification from Netflix. Episode 3 is ready. I didn't touch it. I didn't even look at it. But later, when I went to the bathroom, I found it on the counter, screen glowing. The episode was playing on its own. My hands shook as I stepped closer, dread curling in my stomach. On the screen, the man was in my living room. Not on some generic set, not a likeness, not a copy, but inside my apartment. He crouched near the couch, staring directly at the camera. My pulse pounded in my ears, my breath shallow and rapid. I could feel the cold tendrils of fear creeping over my skin. Then I saw it. the reflection in the bathroom mirror. I had tried so hard to avoid it, but there it was. Me, leaning against the counter, wide-eyed, frozen. Only it wasn't me. Not entirely. The eyes were darker, hollow in a way that made my chest constrict. The lips curved into a cruel, knowing smile. My reflection raised a hand, pressing it against the mirror, and a strange sensation hit me in my chest, like ice running through my veins. I wanted to pull away, to run, but I was rooted, staring into my own face as if watching a predator waiting for the right moment. My phone slipped from my fingers and hit the tile floor. The screen shattered into jagged shards, but even as the cracks spread, I saw it. My reflection leaning closer, moving out of the mirror, and staring at me from the other side. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, my breath ragged, my mind screaming. The room felt impossibly cold, the shadows stretching and curling like living things. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. The apartment, the man, the reflection. They had merged into something that existed outside the rules of normality. I felt a presence behind me, and instinctively I spun around. Nothing. The room was empty, yet the feeling remained, heavier than any object, pressing against me. My laptop sat on the couch, dead and dark, but I knew it wasn't finished. The show, or whatever force it contained, was still alive, still watching, still waiting. I wanted to leave, to run into the streets, to escape, but the shadows seemed to push against me, rooting me in place. And then I heard it, a soft, deliberate laugh, low and hollow, echoing from every corner at once. It wasn't the man on the screen. It wasn't me. It was something else, something patient, something that had been learning me, studying me, shaping its own existence around my fear. My reflection tilted its head, smiling, and I realized with a cold certainty that this wasn't just a show anymore. It had found a way out. It was here, waiting. I returned home the next day, my mind a whirlwind of dread and exhaustion. Every step toward my apartment felt heavier, each sound in the hallway a warning. My hands trembled as I inserted the key, and when the door finally swung open, it felt different. The air was thicker, heavier, as if it were holding its breath. Everything was where I had left it. The couch, the rug, the paintings. But the familiarity offered no comfort. Every shadow seemed to twitch at the edge of my vision. My laptop lay on the coffee table, dead and cold, and my phone was silent, its screen dark. For a moment, I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, it had all ended. But the feeling of being watched didn't leave. It clung to me, creeping along my skin, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. Hours passed. I tried to keep busy, tidying, making coffee, anything to distract myself. I avoided mirrors, avoided even glancing at the TV screen. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. And then I noticed it, a slip of mail I hadn't seen before tucked under the door. My hands shook as I picked it up. A small package, wrapped in plain brown paper, no return address. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. I tore it open. Inside was a DVD, a single disc, handwritten in shaky, uneven letters, Episode 5, For You. I didn't remember ordering anything. My stomach turned, a sick weight pressing down. The thought that it had come from someone or something that knew me, my fears, made my skin crawl. Against every instinct screaming at me to destroy it, to throw it into the fire, I found myself sliding it into my laptop. The screen flickered to life. The man appeared immediately, standing in my living room, but he wasn't alone. Behind him, a figure stepped forward. It was me. Or at least it looked like me. My own face, my own body, mirrored perfectly. I froze, unable to look away. The figure moved like I might move, but it wasn't me. It was something else. Something patient and cruel, learning every fear, every hesitation. The man turned toward my double, smiling in a way that made my stomach twist. The double raised a hand and I felt a pressure in my chest, cold and insistent, as though it was reaching across reality itself. Then the laptop shut off on its own. The room was silent. I told myself it was over, that I had survived. But when I looked up, I saw it, faintly, almost impossibly, the shadow of my double lingering in the corner. Not fully formed, just a smudge of darkness, watching. My own breath quickened, heart hammering. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if it were alive. I wanted to run, to escape, but my legs wouldn't obey. I could only stare. And then I heard it, a laugh. Low, hollow, unmistakably my own, but twisted. It didn't come from me. It came from somewhere else, somewhere just out of reach, yet close enough to send ice crawling down my spine. My reflection in the window across the room didn't mimic me. It smiled, leaned closer, and vanished. The shadows around me shifted. The apartment was still, silent, yet I knew it wasn't empty. I haven't left since. The laptop remains closed, the DVD untouched. But every time I see a reflection, every time I hear a faint creak, every time Netflix asks if I want to continue watching, I know it's not just a show anymore. It's alive. And somewhere, waiting, is me. Or what wants to be me.